Welcome to the House of Obsidian. We are live with Protocol X today. I'm stoked to dive into what they're building. They are currently in their pre-sale, marketed as the first rebase protocol with a sustainable APY management system and a liquidity management system. So I'm stoked to dive into that. Anyone that knows me knows that I have bought into a lot of rebases. I think that it's a fun economic experiment, and I'm waiting to see who does it really well. So we'll see if it's you guys. That'd be awesome.
I appreciate you guys having us up here, and we definitely look forward to the conversation today. A lot of different elements, so hopefully we can go into each and every one of them for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say just to start things off, for anyone that's never heard of Protocol X, just essentially like the introduction. How would you introduce who you guys are, what you're building, what makes you different, like what needs you're addressing in the market, anything that you would normally introduce yourself as?
Yeah, so that's a great just introduction there. So obviously, I'll just go into just a couple of us who are up on the stage, myself, Shiblord, or Neil. I am joined by the one and only Bran, who's my community manager. We have a team of 6 on the Protocol X team, all of which are doxed. I am KYC'd by Assure. I'm also partnered with Assure, and I'm the CEO and founder. So all the contracts will be in my name, everything like that. So security is a pretty important thing. We're all very well known. Our About Us can go into each and every one of us, all with a variety of different experience in the crypto space, DeFi, business, and etc. from there. But the project itself, on the most fundamental level, it's a rebase protocol in BSC. We've seen those kind of pop up over the last year plus, and some do very well, others, maybe not so much. But a couple of things that we've kind of identified over the last year plus is there's generally a lack of sustainability variables, a lack of transparency, and an influx of greed that generally runs these projects off course sooner rather than later these days. Back then, maybe they got away with it for a while, but there's obviously some major flaws in the system that we've seen here. So we have this rebase token. We have a variety of different sustainability variables built into the contract, as well as manually driven into it from buybacks and burns and things like that there. We also are developing, we'll introduce an NFT revenue share system. So a portion of the buy and sales tax that are commonly associated with rebase protocols will be able to go back to the people who elect to mint these NFTs. I'm pretty excited about that because I like that passive income kind of mindset in general. So that kind of appeals to maybe a similar but different audience in the broader perspective there, and maybe even the same, of course. So we have that. We have our own custom decks that took a little bit of a setback, so that'll get built up and live here probably the next few weeks. So I'm not too concerned about that there. But that's primarily where my partnership with Assure comes into play, is that we're going to have a good, transparent, and KYC and other vetted and verified protocols only on there. So we have a lot going on in this ecosystem, but generally the problems we're looking to solve is that of runaway inflation, lack of transparency, and influx of greed. We can solve all of those by a very simple contract development, and also us just being transparent and ideally good ethical people.
Sweet. Beautiful. Well, solving a runaway inflation sounds really interesting to me in a rebase. That's like primarily the largest thing that anyone's had to tackle in the rebase space, is that inflation just seems to catch up to them. So I would love, and actually before I ask this question, for anyone listening for the first time, the ledger is the chat space. You'll see it on the left side under the Obsidian stage. If you want to enter the giveaway today, make sure you're asking a high quality question in the ledger. That means if I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's a copy and paste. I've seen that exact phrasing 20 times. That's not going to count as an entry. I want people that are interested in the conversation today asking relevant questions pertaining to today's conversation. Feel free to ask at any time. Our amazing team is tracking those. So back to the conversation. How are you guys, especially when you say like one of your primary goals is solving runaway inflation, how exactly are you doing that while being a rebasing protocol?
Thank you, Matthew. I'll touch base on that a little bit. So one of the major things is, as a rebase token, there's many ways that you can use it, right? So there's a lot of respected projects that I know and actually, work within that use it as a distribution method. Now, that's brilliant for long-term economic solutions, right? Now, if you're looking for a distribution method for a future token or for a blockchain, that's great. And it works amazingly. Now, one thing that we're looking to solve is the short-term problems that these tokens have. Now, with regards to, the major players with, 400,000 K APY, one thing that tends to be a bit, not looked into too much is the outside revenue from day one, right? Now, a lot of protocols already have this, and they're obviously bringing in VCs, bringing in blockchain partnerships, all that stuff, which is obviously great. But what we're looking to do is build that from within DeFi. Now, one thing I think gets lost, sort of in, transitioning, is that building from DeFi from day one. Look, if you're a protocol in DeFi and it's a rebase protocol, what you then need to do is build within, grow with the smaller communities, the large communities. One of our major partnerships, they're not a massive token, but they're a massive token with so much potential. One way that we're going to curb, rebase emissions issues is by having that revenue source on day one. So if you don't know, we're partners with Ego. Ego, in the long and short of it, is a trading bot software. Well, the whole token isn't just based around trading bots, but they've developed their own trading bot, which has very, very good returns. Now, that bot averages between a 20 to 80% return per month and is yet to have a negative month. Last month itself had a 32% return. So obviously our partnership with Ego, we're then able to put a percent of our treasury that is gained from pre-sale, which has already gone in, by the way. So Shib was already personally invested in Ego himself and was already seeing satisfactory returns in that regard. So it already has the results proven. The team at Ego are very, very transparent. They're free to chat whenever if you want to discuss. So it's a very good partnership that we have. Now, that's one way. To put this into perspective, if you put $100,000 into said trading bot, and it does average a return of 32%, for the next 6 months. If you let that compound or you take, the profit out, you're still going to make a lot of money externally. Not only does that money help with paying development costs, team salaries, marketing, and future development, such as things you can see on our roadmap, it also means that the project isn't eating itself from within. A major factor that we see is one, large treasury sales, which is quite common. Tokens, they hit month 4, 5, 6, and they have to sell a large amount of treasury to pay for marketing or pay for further development. One thing that we're looking to do is build that from day one. So with our treasury, we're also going to be looking at developing a bot in the future that will aggregate sales within the treasury. The reason why we're going to do that is because what we want is this protocol to pretty much sustain itself. We don't want to have to go there one day and say, hey, we're going to sell $100,000. No, what we want to do is we're currently working. It'll be a treasury management bot. That's something we're looking to do down the line. And what that would do is anytime there is a large buy, essentially it would sell like 1 to 2% of that buy. It wouldn't do it on small sales. It wouldn't do it on smaller buyers. So that's just a thing to work with the liquidity management system that's being developed by Solar, who is one of our partners. And that all goes back that we one of our main things is there's so many projects that are at a smaller market cap. And it's been proven in recent times that it doesn't matter if the project has a lot of hype or is big. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. There's many, many projects that I know sub 10 million market cap that have got absolutely amazing roadmaps. So one of our main focus in that sense is to kind of unite them small projects, show people that just because you're a small project doesn't mean you haven't got them substantial ideas and the ability to build something great. So just in a nutshell, I ramble a lot, but we have the liquidity management system. We have something I'll let Shib touch base on regarding liquidity. We have the external revenue sources from day one. And then we also have our partnerships, which will be used to build revenue as well.
Excellent. Sweet. Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, and when I say issues, this isn't to like insult any previous Rebase projects, but one of the biggest things that the Rebase forerunners ran into was that their only revenue source, and this is not all of them, but a good portion of them, their only revenue source was investors buying in. And so if the only thing you're relying on is money coming in from investors and that money leaves from investors, that's just not enough to sustain continually printing money with a Rebase protocol. And so your guys' solution is 1, a liquidity management system, 2, external revenue sources, and 3, your partnerships that are going to be bringing in more revenue. What's the difference between, so when you were talking about your liquidity management system, is that the bot with Evo, and that's how you're utilizing essentially your treasury to grow your treasury?
Yes. No, so that would be completely.
So that would be the external revenue.
Yeah, that would be external revenue. So that would be a portion of the treasury. I'll let Shib touch base on this a little bit more, but that will be external revenue coming from the treasury. So making the treasury work for itself in a sense. Right. So instead of the funds just sitting there and technically depreciating, we're in a recession. So the money just sitting there and doing nothing for itself isn't going to help the protocol. Just sitting there and having these large returns, when instead we can have things working for us, have them reports, have things that say, hey, this made the protocol this much money and we're going to use this for X sort of thing. But yeah, so they're completely different. The LMS system will be from our recent partners, Solar Protocol, who are also helping us build all of our contracts and development side. So that will be built through them. They currently have their own LMS system and we'll be looking to use sort of upgrade that, play with it, and rework that into our system.
I've done, I think, 2 AMAs with Solar, so I know about their LMS system.
Great team. Very, very great team.
For anyone that's not familiar with who Solar is or what an LMS system is, do one of you guys want to touch on that for just like a minute or so?
Yes, I'll go in there a little bit. So Solar is, I don't want to definitely speak exactly for what they do, but obviously they have some great mechanics built in. I'd highly recommend you guys go check out their Discord and just their general information. What our partnership with them, because we are now formally partnered with Solar, is on the developmental side. And I'll touch on this. We had a little bit of developer issues, which seems to be a common trend in this space last week. And then, I reached out to Ego CEO Narek, and I said, hey, who's someone you can trust? And he immediately referred me to Solar, hooked them up, started talking with them a little bit. In 6 weeks of what I gave this other team to do, they had us situated in 2 days and ready to go. So they are killing it. They are so good. And by the way, it's a better product than what this other team was doing. So yeah, I might have lost some money on the other one, but it is what it is. So shout out to them over there. Their LMS system in general is a price management system. And kind of how that works is you set a range. And we've seen this be successful, and we've seen a very recent, very high-profile failure of it. I don't know if I want to go into that, but I'll let you guide that if we want to. So generally speaking, you set this range here. Yeah, so we set a range.
Yeah. I think anyone listening knows exactly what you're talking about.
So. Yeah, so we know where it can go wrong. But you set a range here, and the price range is defined however you wish. So within that range, there's an upper level and a lower level. As this gets to the upper level of the trading, and this is your token price, by the way. So let's just let's just use an example of our token price. We're going to launch at 0.07, so 7 cents. Let's say we set our range from 7 cents to 15 cents. As it gets up to that 15-cent point, the LMS system, this little bot within the liquidity management system, will start selling to create a fund within that own little pool there. So now, cool, it's killing it, volume's going crazy, it's building up this fund, but now we have a little bit of a bad day. Who knows, who cares, Bitcoin's dying, whatever the world says on any given day, token price falls. So now we're getting back down closer to that 0.07 rather. Then that system will then start conducting automatic built-in contractual buybacks to support that price on the bottom end. And that's generally how the range system works. Ours, I'm going to design custom to be almost like a rising floor theory. So I might let it pump up a little bit, but I'll keep setting different levels for the upper point so that we can continuously build a fund that I can then support a floor price. We've seen that be implemented with a project called Jade way back in the day. Don't love how they got there, but they got it there. And that rising floor mechanism is relatively interesting if you can support it, because over time the system feeds into itself and it just creates a little bit of a barrier on the bottom end that has a strong support. And that is what people really want to see over time. Yeah, they want that massive pump early on, but without sustainability, you're chasing that, you're chasing that dragon month 2, 3, 4, year 1, whatever the case might be, as these projects might be promising you, hey, if you hold for a year, you'll be, millions of dollars off your $1,000 investment. And we all know it's not the case. So this allows us to control that price appreciation just a little bit more than we would have been before without this LMS system. Combine that with a decreasing APR mechanism that we have built in, the buybacks and burns from the taxes and from the ego bot, outside revenue sources from all different standpoints. And we have a pretty decent product that we believe can actually bring us genuine sustainability sooner rather than later.
Sweet. Awesome. Yep. That's essentially what a LMS system is, and seeing it combined with rebasing. I was like grimacing over here when you referenced, we just saw some difficulty tackled with rebasing and LMS. But even in that case, their specific reasoning was like, there's not enough external revenue. And so that's the difficulty and the downside of LMS is you spend money to balance the price. So if you don't have money coming in, it shortens your survivability the same way that printing money with rebasing does. And so you have to have that external revenue. So you guys have there's a ton of questions about the ego bot. You guys have the LMS system with solar, essentially to combat inflation. At the same time, you have external revenue sources. What are some of those external revenue sources besides the ego bot that we talked about already? Do you have any other ones planned?
We do. So there's a couple there, and some are a little different than others. So I have a partnership working with Freeway. I just actually talked to them again this morning to get a corporate account set up. Obviously, I do have everything that I do on here is under an LLC if anyone cares about any of that, but I try to keep it within some legal standings there. But to open up a corporate account with them, that's just another method to bring in some revenue over time. I've read over their audits and they've provided me with a lot of information on there. So I'm actually fairly confident of them being a lower risk, generally decent level. We're talking like 42% APY, so nothing substantial, but it is decent there. And then we combine that with other partners that we've already formalized there. And that is kind of a key to the LP side. So if you guys are aware of MDB, I'm sure many people are. Amazing product. They have like a deflationary system built into their token. So this is another mechanism that we can use to support our price via an LP that's going to be established on our DEX. And yeah, that does, maybe it's not a direct outside revenue source, but it's another variable that increases the price pressure in a positive direction. So we have the EgoBot, we have Freeway. Those will both be implemented. EgoBot definitely on day one. Freeway, as soon as I can get that set up, probably sometime mid next week. We'll have MDB is going to be one of our primary investment partners. And then obviously there's also Vault Finance, which is one of our partners, and they have a great system as well, kind of like a gasless mechanism, very similar to what MDB does for an LP side. So a lot of these different things here, they're going to support the protocol in different ways. The EgoBot being the primary outside revenue deriver, and then everything else is a little bit lower risk or more so tied to the token in and of itself to bring that involved. We also have that DEX that we'll be bringing live, and of course that'll bring in some form of revenue, but I have it designed to not be a massive revenue deriving tool. I want it to be a tool for us to grow and develop in DeFi with our partners rather than trying to make a lot of money off of that. But that'll help, of course. So we have a variety of just different elements kind of working in the background for us as we navigate the near and then mid to long-term futures.
Sweet. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think it's cool that you guys are tackling inflation now, like as you're launching, instead of letting it run and then figuring it out. That's happened a few times. And I don't think that, I was going to say, I don't think that's totally the fault of like previous rebases, especially if they were the forerunners. You're kind of figuring it out on the fly, but you guys can come in and say, hey, we've seen what hasn't worked. Let's start properly. And so it's cool that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, Matthew, honestly, that's one thing we really pride ourselves on. We've been in this space a while. I'm a massive fan of rebase tokens. That's pretty much all I've been buying for like the last, 8 months now since they become a thing. Rebase tokens are really fun tokens. The initial hype and the initial growth is always amazing. When they first started out, they were literally moonshot tokens. If you saw Sphere, Titano, Seifu, anything that was rebase token, absolutely rocketed. But one thing that we found was, with some of them, they didn't have a plan prior to launching that token. So what happened was they went, oh no, the emissions are catching up with us. We need to drop something. But by the time that point happens, one thing is a very big misconception in DeFi is things don't take, a couple of hours to make. There's some projects that I know that have been working on apps and development side that take, months and months to make.
Yep.
You can't just launch an app overnight and it be a great app. Some things take time. If you want an actual good product, it takes time. So what you need to do is plan that before. And I feel like a lot of projects, what they do is they launch, they get that initial hype traction, then they build a treasury and then go, okay, now we have $500,000. What can we do? That's one thing we're taking out of the aspect is going, hey, we're not just saying we have an LMS system. We're not just saying, hey, we have this. We're actually saying from day one, we have partnerships with Ego and, MDB for their arbitrage bot. There's so many things going on. One of our next partners who we're going to announce, we can't announce prior, is another growth tactic and another way that we've been planning the future. And I feel like a lot of tokens in the space, rebase tokens, some of them are great. Some of them have amazing marketing plans. Some of them have, that direct real world get and go. There's some great projects that I work for and I'm invested in. But some of them are too reliant on that in-house treasury. Some are too reliant on that in-house generation of funds. So what we're going to do is from the get-go is go, hey, let's bring as much money from outside of the protocol so we don't have to eat it. Because even if it gets to a point within the first couple of months, we can go, hey, the buy and burn and all of the development costs and the very, very low, modest team salaries are now being paid externally. We aren't touching anything. All team tokens have been burnt, etc. Then we're at a point now where that project is building itself technically cost-free because you're not going to have the treasury have to dump to pay for things. You're not going to have, and then the funds that do build in the treasury can be used for marketing, further development. So when we get to a point of, hey, we're now sustainable outside of the protocol. I think that's one of our main goals and one of the things that we're trying to do. Be sustainable outside the protocol to then make the protocol sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point. If you can become sustainable outside of it, that's how you support an APY that outside of DeFi would feel like it's to the moon. What is your guys' APY for rebasing?
So our APY is around 63,000% based off the 1.77%. But as that, one thing that we're really excited about is the decreasing aspect. Because what you're not going to have is if you're an early holder, for example, you've bought pre-sale, you're going to start 1.77% a day, right? And then you go to month 2, that drops to 1.59% and then drops to 1.44%, et cetera, et cetera. So eventually within that 12 months, it's going to drop to 0.5%, right? So if you've said, I trust in the longevity of this project, obviously I recommend everyone takes profit. Everyone makes sure that they're not over risking. And I honestly hope that everyone is making sure that they're doing what is best in their trading technique and obviously not financial advice. But if you get to a point where you're an early investor, okay, now the daily rebases are only 1.4 or 1%, say they've dropped from 1.177 and they're now 1% a day. You're still going to be earning more because you were an early believer, but it still doesn't leave any newcomers out. Because with our taxes being variable, we'd never raise the taxes. But eventually, over time, we could decrease the taxes. Because if we get to a point where we're at 0.5% a day, we're not going to need them huge taxes. If we've got, 2 million, example, coming externally into the protocol a month, why do we then need to tax our holders? And that's one thing that I never got was increasing sell taxes and anti-whale systems as such. It just never made sense to me. If we can do anything to lower the taxes, we will. And what I was getting at there is if we start at 1.77% at the start, it just incentivizes people to hold because even in month 7 or 8, when the APR, the daily APR is about 0.9 or 0.8%, you're still going to be earning more in token value than you would from the start just for holding. But that still doesn't take away from any newcomers because 1% a day is still attractive. But obviously, the way we've been thinking about it as well, there's less chance people are going to hold from day 1 to 365 when you're not promising them insane returns. When you're being realistic about it and saying, hey, $1,000 is not going to make you a millionaire, then you have more chance of actually growing a core foundation of holders rather than Moon Boys. And what that then does is it stops all sort of future, any FUD, any people going, hey, I bought at this price and this price, now I'm down 90%. What it does, it builds a culture of actually educating people and saying, hey, you need to actually look into this. It's not going to make you $1 million from $1,000, but it will make you 1.4% a day or 1.7% a day. And if we can lower the taxes once we get towards the 0.5%, then that is something we're obviously hoping for, to obviously not have to, taxes, I don't like taxes, but they have to be there to sustain the protocol, right? I don't think raising them, I think that's completely immoral. So yeah, we're aiming to try and get that as low as possible, make it sustainable as possible. And obviously the APR and the APY is still good no matter what point you join. It just, if you are the diamond hand type, you're obviously going to benefit from day one, as opposed to if you join in month 6, you're still going to benefit, just not as much. But in a sense, you're still going to have that high daily APR, but it's not going to cause a severe amount of inflation and have whale games later down the line where someone could just enter, double their tokens in 20 days and then dump on you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. Beautiful. I'm thinking through other questions that I would want to ask you guys outside of the APY then. I saw someone said in the chat that they'd been to a few AMAs and they were always impressed with your answers to the security-based questions. And those are questions they get asked basically in every AMA about what you guys have done to secure the protocol. So first off, is your contract audited?
Yeah, so I'll go into all that there. So ironically enough, I was in the Telegram DMs with the CertiK auditor during this AMA here. So it will be audited. Our contract for the token will be finalized probably later today, if not a worst case, early tomorrow morning. And then I get it over to CertiK to start their audit. So that'll ideally be done, if not at the launch, maybe just slightly after. But it will be a CertiK audit on there. As far as the additional security measures, I've already kind of touched on it. We're all doxed. I'm KYC'd and partnered with Assure, and we kind of work all that end there. However, we do know that the security aspect of the contract is incredibly important. And one thing I've seen happen in the space is like, hey, these founders say, well, we have this rogue dev, and he's the one that rugged the protocol. For my way of eliminating that sort of potential excuse is that I own all the contracts, I own the domain, I own everything here. So it'll be me doing the pull commands on the contract. Yeah, the dev team's going to guide me through it, but I'm the one that's KYC'd. I'm the one that's doxed. Not that the dev team is KYC'd and doxed, but you know what I mean there. I cannot just go blame them for other things there. So a lot of it's putting the onus on myself. Having that contract audit by CertiK is very important for me to ensure the security of the contract in and of itself. And that'll be the standard moving forward. Anything that we do, we have an NFT revenue share system that'll be coming out. We'll have the DEX, of course. We'll have a variety of other contracts that'll be introduced over time. They will all be audited, likely by CertiK. And then that allows us to kind of maintain that just base level of security at any given point there. And then obviously, like I said, it falls down on me at the end of the day, because I'm not going to let some, quote unquote rogue dev be a scapegoat for malicious activity from potential teams.
Yeah, sweet. Awesome. So in process audit from CertiK, everything has to go directly through you specifically. About the contract in general. So you mentioned earlier that you guys had a different dev team working for you, and that did not work out. And then you guys started working with Solar, who, for anyone that doesn't know who they are, they essentially are, I don't know, developers for hire. Like part of their protocol is assisting development of other protocols. And so now that Solar's working with you, did they just take over the contract that was being built from the other team, or did they build a new contract for you guys from scratch?
Yeah, it's entirely new contract. So from what I understand, This other team, I had them for 6 weeks. They planned on, I guess, doing it all the very, very, very last second. So I had nothing. By the time I paid them a considerable amount, and then the day before pre-sale comes, and allegedly the main dev, no one's heard from him since. So I didn't have the data for the website. I didn't have the contracts. I didn't even have the pre-sale contract. So that's what the Solar team hooked me up with, is they had to rebuild it all for us. and they did it very, very quickly, very efficiently, and like I said, better than what the other team would have given me before. So nothing from what they've done I even have access to. Nothing was worked on from them. So our team completely rebuilt this from the ground up. So I know that would be a question of concern is, hey, what if there is something malicious in their code?
Right.
Well, irrelevant because we don't have their code. They kept it.
Easy. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why I was asking that question is we see, and that doesn't happen all the time, but we've definitely seen situations where a dev that had previously just been contracted, he's not even on the team, disappears, and 2 months later, he takes advantage of like a backdoor that he put in. And so because it's a completely different contract, there is no backdoor for them. It's just you guys and Solar who have access to the contract itself right now.
Yep, that's correct.
Sweet. And then with someone asked in the chat, with the funds, like the treasury and all of that, you mentioned with pretty much everything you own, and so everything goes through you. With the treasury or anything to do with the funds, is that you solely, or is that on a multi-sig between team members?
Yeah, so right now we have a 4.6 multi-sig for the main treasury wallet, and then also the team allocation wallet. So everything's going to be on that 4.6 multi-sig. So yeah, I do say I own everything, and everything goes through me. But Brandon's up here, and everyone else on my team can reaffirm this. Everything that they input to me is an equal voice to my own. So if they were like, hey, huge red flags with insert potential investment, then we probably wouldn't go with them, of course. So a lot of that's going to funnel through me, but it has to be approved by everyone on the team, at least to a 4.6 multi-sig purpose of that.
Sweet. And the 6 people on that multi-sig, is that just your team? Is Solar on there? Who all is on those 6 slots?
Yeah, but it's just our team. It's myself, it's Bran, CK, Adam, Sally, and then we have Wox, who's my graphics designer. So all 6 of us are on there, and that's just how the multi-sig is for now, yeah.
Awesome.
Just to clarify, everyone that is on the multi-sig is doxed publicly. If you look on the white paper or the website, you can actually see everyone. Everyone on the website is who is on the multi-sig.
Beautiful. I love that. I think if we can move more towards a doxed space behind the businesses, it's beautiful. That is a win in DeFi. I think there are specific cases where anonymity, there's an argument to be made, especially when regulation is unsure in quite a few specific scenarios. But if it's possible to be doxed, I think that's a win.
Of course, yeah. A lot of developers, they stay anon because of one, the governments can see them as a security, and that's obviously an implication. So I get that. I do get that side. However, it's also that if you're going to invest in a business, you should know who's owning the funds, who's running the funds. And that's why, Neil so confidently says, look, everything is under my name, like the contracts, the company, everything is under my name. Yes, we have a multi-sig, which is a 4 out of 6, but it's still, under his name. And that's what some tokens don't do. You've got the forefront, you've got the CEO, you've got the big guy, you've got the hype man, but then who actually manages the fund? Who's pulling the contract? Who's actually doing that? Now, that's obviously one thing that we kind of pride ourselves on. Another thing we sort of pride ourselves on, and something we're going to be looking to do that no other rebase project has actually really done, or any project, is either weekly or monthly financial reports. Neil himself, he tracks every single transaction. It's all in a document, all saved nice and safe. So all the funds, we're going to try and be as transparent as possible. Obviously, you can't be exact all the time because of many reasons, people's privacy. Salaries would be obviously a whole amount for everyone, the total amount. Now, the only reason why is because it's down to the person's discretion, right? You don't sit there and ask, hey, how much do you earn a week? But obviously the whole amount were there so you can see how clear it is. I think our entire team, including our moderation team, the total salary is I think it's just shy of $10,000 a week. And that's, about 12 or 13 people. So not only is that for, the forefront, the people putting the 20 hours a day into the team, the people that are working day in, day out, moderating, helping the community, and going from there. I think it's a little bit less than that, maybe even a lot less than that, but it is definitely under that. And I know some projects you've had where just the developers being paid, $9,000, $10,000 a week, or the some people are getting, $7,000-8,000 a week. So their expenses are looking about $100,000 a week. But what we said is we want to start this as a lot of us are full-time crypto. Neil himself went full-time crypto in March. May, sorry, I believe, sorry. And I've been full-time crypto for a while now. So there's a lot of time we can dedicate. I believe that, developers, mod teams, everyone in the space, anyone that's, developing and building a token and putting, endless, countless days into it, 20 plus hours, even the mods, I think are a very underestimated member of the team is the mods. We have a great mod team who are there 24/7. They do a lot of, work that people don't really acknowledge as much. I'm a mod myself in multiple communities. So massive respect to all the moderators out there. I think that you guys should be equally included in the team. And that's something we sort of pride ourselves on by paying our mods very fair prices. Very fair salaries, because they do a lot of work. Moderators are one of the core foundations of the community and actually do help build the community.
Yeah, I'd shout out to all of the mods out there. Shout out to all my mods, the amazing shields right now that are tracking questions in the chat. If you're a mod in the Discord community, it takes more than you're right. It takes a lot. I don't think most people realize the time.
It does. It takes a lot more than people think. It is a lot of work. And, being a mod myself in some communities, I know that it is hard work. So shout out to all the mods.
Beautiful. Cool. Well, next question is, I guess, a market-based question. You guys made the bold decision to launch in a bear market. Was that your initial plan? Were you building Protocol X before this market flipped to a bear market, and this is just where we are now, and you guys have doubled down? Are you choosing to do anything different because of the bear market? Yeah, I guess just like your thoughts on launching in a bear market.
Yeah, so there's pros and cons to everything, right? So this is almost like a business perspective. If my educational background's in economics, I kind of try to look at things from a little bit of that kind of aspect of things here. So if you sit here and say, hey, we're going to try to wait for a good market to come, well, what is a good market? That's always hard to identify. Maybe a good market is the next all-time high, and then you ride some crazy high. But that also poses other challenges when you are within that bull market in of itself. So if we would have launched, let's say 1 year ago with what we might have something like 10,000 holders in the first week, right? Well, that's great. That puts a lot of pressure on these sustainability variables for us to start working on if that were to be the case. Now, there's pros and cons. Obviously, you'd have a big influx. You have more money to work with, all that good stuff there. But we've been building, we've been in a bear market since last November, as far as I'm concerned. DeFi had a little pump in January, February, and into March. But, overall, we've been bear for quite a bit. So I don't think it's, practical to try to wait for, perfect timing, because there is no perfect timing. So, yeah, we do have to, incorporate some, more lockdown strategies. Like Brand just mentioned, our salaries are not extravagant, and that's great. That's how it should be in small business in general. We're here to build something for the community that can be ideally a passive income stream in DeFi for quite some time. So yeah, it's a pros and cons to everything here. I think launching in a bear market for us isn't going to discourage or dissuade anything that we're looking to do. We operate generally off of percentages. So if we raised, our pre-sale allocation, our pre-sale is currently live. The hard cap is 1.2 million. We're at 311,000, both of which is fine. We could launch right now at 311,000, and the strategies that we built out work perfect. If we launch with 1.2 million, the strategies we worked out work perfect, because they're all percentage based in that aspect there. So it just allows us to work and kind of dive into here. And I don't try to worry a whole lot about the outside influences. And this is like a little personal story, but I used to be in competitive martial arts. And how I train is I train to my own strengths. I didn't try to vet whoever I was going to, be fighting or rolling with and say, hey, what are their weaknesses? That's not important to me. I need to be good at what I'm good at, thrive in that aspect. And that's how I, it worked for me. So that's how I'm going to treat the business. I've done small business kind of the same way. You kind of zone into what you're good at, really, really dive into that. Don't let the outside noise affect you too much. Keep it in mind, keep it in consideration, strategize accordingly. But of course, we have to thrive off of what we're good at here on our end.
Legendary. Yep. Good answer. I think I tend to ask most projects about their take on the bear market, just because it gives you a little bit of insight in the mind of the team. And I think that's super relevant. Cool. Well, one more question from me, and then, well, maybe two more questions from me, and then we'll get to audience questions. I've been weaving them in a little bit. My last question is specifically, I would love to hear a little bit more about the revenue share NFTs.
Yeah, so I'll touch base on that for you. So the revenue share NFTs are a really good idea that we're building on. You know, everything to do with the NFT share model is building every day. Now, what it is in a nutshell is we wanted to build an ecosystem that kind of worked for itself. So something that didn't have to rely on one another, right? Something that can work in congruency with it. So what we've built is a revenue share model. Now, the revenue share model will consist of 4 tiers. Well, 5 tiers technically for some OGs, but 4 tiers initially. So you have the common, uncommon, rare, and then the legendary. So essentially what they are is they'll receive a percentage of all of the taxes. Now, we have a 2% tax built into our contract for all buys and sells. That tax will already be directly going to a fund. That wallet itself will then get distributed to everyone who owns the NFT, whether that be weekly, monthly. Now, not only are we going to do that, we are the first rebase protocol to introduce a revenue share model. Now, the revenue share model in itself is a really good aspect because what we're doing with that revenue share model is we're essentially future-proofing it. So what we could have done is have a card that said, hey, this is a revenue share model. But what we've done is we've evolved these into sort of passageways. Now, the reason why we've done passageways, so essentially these NFTs aren't by a artist. There is no artist behind them. All of them are AI generated. Everything is done by computer and they're all generated based off our input. Now, these graphics or these revenue share models are doors. So a way to explain why we've done doors is to future-proof them. So not only do we want to build them into a revenue share model, we also want to bring that into gamification. Now, I'll touch base on the gamification after, but the way that their doors will work is, say you've purchased PTX, right? So eventually you'll be able to buy an X share door for whatever price we set that at. We're currently waiting for some mathematical data to give them sort of a valuation based on our trading bot and based on, the volume within a token, because as I said, 2% of every transaction will go to that, right? Now, the way it will work is once you hold PTX, you're getting your daily rebases, and that's great. Now, one way to counter inflation would be to have it so there's a thing called an X key, right? Now, an X key is another part of the ecosystem. What an X key is essentially is something you can buy with PTX. Now, that X key, you can use your rebases, you can purchase more PTX and just buy the keys. What you'll be able to do is then upgrade your X share. Now, your X share will have 4 tiers, as I said. The first tier, the second tier, the third tier, and the fourth tier. The fourth tier, you cannot purchase. That has no technical, tangible value. Now, the fourth tier itself will only be able to be given to people in certain ways. The fourth tier at the minute, I'm just pulling up the information now. Some of the perks for it is there's 100 exclusive NFTs. These can only be provided by defined events and not able to be purchased. They will have the highest revenue from taxes, bonus percentages from our ego trading bot, and bonus airdrops. These ones, the legendary ones specifically, will also have government voting rights, equal voice as any team member for certain aspects of the protocol. And then it will have a 10% of total X share tax shared between rare and legendary. Now, touching base on the governance side of that is obviously we want to listen to our community, and I think that's one of the things that isn't done pretty well, especially in a rebase protocol. Obviously, the major decisions at the end of the day, SHIB touch base on it, it will still have to funnel through SHIB. But what that then does is we're going to be setting up, group calls, personal calls with people who own legendary NFTs and go, hey, you have a stake in the token, right? You are here for the long term. What would you like to see from the token? And I think that brings that personal one-on-one with the community rather than just saying, hey, drop some suggestions. So that's something that will have a sort of legendary NFT perk. Other perks would be, airdrops, PTX airdrops, X-Share airdrops. And it's just something that people can go, hey, I've got a bunch of PTX and I'm still earning, 1% a day. So we're 6 months down the line. I've already sold, I've made some money. So what I can then do is use that rebase PTX, buy an X key, which will then burn that PTX, and then use an X key to try and upgrade your revenue share. And what that does is essentially just gives you another stake in the protocol without you having to, spend more money. Because if you buy a base X share, it won't cost much money. We're not talking about thousands of dollars. It'll probably cost a couple of $100 maximum. Yeah. So you get to buy one, and then that is forever upgradable with your PTX. And that will work well with our sort of decks as such. So there'll be some sort of animation or game or whatnot, so you can have fun, try upgrade, play in the lottery, which we'll have on our D app. And it all kind of ties in together. You can, with the X swap, you'll be able to stake your X swap wrapped PTX. If you don't know what how to wrap a rebase token, it's basically, in a nutshell, calling the index function within the token and to stop the visual effects of the rebase and have it rebase within the wrap in congruency to raising the floor price of the wrap token. So technically it's still rebases, but what that enables you to do is use that to stake for other coins on the platform. And that's something we'll be working with, teams like Magic Vault, Magic Finance on their, vaults to sort of build up ways we can have the ecosystem work for itself. But in a nutshell, the X shares will be upgradable. You wouldn't have to pay more money in cash value to upgrade them. It will all be done with PTX. You would obviously just have to buy the base. It will only be very limited amounts. I mean, the base ones are only going to have 5,000. So once they're all sold out, you're not going to be able to get any more, right? So people that are upgrading, eventually they're going to get rarer and rarer. And the least people will have the rare ones, of course, and they will have a larger share of the revenue. But it doesn't obviously stop within the protocol. They will expand to gamification. They will expand to having their own sort of ego sort of budget, if you know what I mean. So the sales from the NFTs will go into the ego bot and generate them revenue. With our obviously special partnership, we've got lower taxes on the bot. We don't pay ego as much to use it, right? So then that benefits the holder itself, and obviously any other aspects that draw revenue will funnel into that as well.
Sweet. Yeah, fantastic. I dig the idea and really just the general concept of revenue share NFTs, just because I think they hold a little bit more value than what NFTs were 6 months ago. And knowing that it's essentially similar to holding shares in a company and receiving dividends based on your guys' success. When you were mentioning using the keys to have a chance at upgrading, does that mean, so I spend my rebase tokens. I spend those to purchase a key. The key allows me to open a door and you said potentially. So is it like a random, I may upgrade my NFT, I may not, or is it a guarantee?
So the way that will work is essentially you'll have keys, right? You could buy the keys with PTX. Each store will cost a set amount of keys to upgrade to. So I shouldn't have said potentially, my apologies. But obviously it will cost more to upgrade to each tier. So what that does is then, if people are whales, for example, if you've earned $10,000 in rebases and you want to reinvest into the protocol without actually having to dump, then it's just another avenue for people to go, hey, let me upgrade my uncommon to a rare. It will cost X amount of X keys, which will cost me X amount of PTX. It's technically of no cost to me, and it feeds the protocol, because that PTX will be burned, right? So if, hundreds of people are burning, a couple $1,000s worth of PTX, then that's essentially just going to feed the burn pit. And that's something that we're really trying to do externally, internally. Usually contracts have a built-in burn. So they'll have, hey, 3% goes directly to burn. What we're going to do is the percentage that will go to burn will go to a wallet called the PXBB wallet. So 50% of all of the funds that are in that wallet, because, 50% will be PTX, 50% will be in BNB. We're going to burn the 50% that was already BNB. And instead of having a insurance fund, when to save the protocol, for the first 25% of burn at least, we'll be buying and burning everything. So all the burns will come from that fund, all the transactions, and obviously from external revenue such as the ego bot.
Beautiful. There was a question in the chat about the NFTs, just the conversation we're on. Andy R asked, is the governance power of an NFT, does the tier or the rarity of that NFT give you more governance?
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple ways to look at that. So the only ones with a governance token ability are going to be the highest tier. It's that legendary tier that Brand kind of talked about a little bit. So that'll just be, like I said, relatively exclusive and only event driven. And the reason I do that is we're not a full blown DAO by any means, but that does give us, kind of like a council, like a table of council of up to 100, relatively involved investors that say, hey, this is your voice at the table, and I'll take that voice the same way I do with any one of my other team members and myself, equal voice there. But I don't want it to become like I have 7,000 plus people knocking at the door, asking for rewards to go up, go down, go sideways, all stuff like that. So I'd rather it be a good voice and not exclusive to just whales by any means, but definitely exclusive to people who have a legitimate vested interest in the project.
Yeah, totally. Love it. Makes sense. I think one of the major downsides of DAOs is that it's just that the loudest, most dramatic voice wins often instead of the correct voice. And so setting up a system a little bit differently could be super beneficial. Next question from Vars. Vars said, he commented in the ledger that he's been to 5 AMAs now with you guys. And he's like, I feel like I'm running out of questions to ask. But his favorite thing that he had heard you guys previously talk about was the farms. He said, get them to spill some on the farms in this AMA. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the farms are a good one, right? So obviously you have your generic farms. You have the to provide liquidity for XSwap, right? And we're obviously going to work with partners. We're already going to have MDB Plus, who's one of our partners, as initial liquidity on our DEX. Now, MDB Plus, they specialize in a token with a rise in price floor, essentially. I don't want to use the term that it will never go down in price because that was used once before and it didn't end well. But what their token price does essentially is appreciates. So we're going to have that as one of our bases of liquidity on our exchange. And we're obviously going to have their arbitrage bot to have that arbitrage effect between wherever we list. I was almost about to spill the beans, but we can't announce that yet until they confirm. Well, it's confirmed, but we can't.
They're announcing first.
Yeah. Yes. So I almost spilled the beans there. You almost got me on that one. But
a little bit of alpha.
Essentially, our DEX is going to be secondary, right? I think a big mistake that a lot of protocols make is launching their DEX and trying to go, hey, I'm going to be the next big thing in DeFi. It's impossible. You're not going to straight off the bat overtake the competitors. Yes, you're going to have that initial hype. You're going to have that initial pump. You may even get millions of dollars with volume. We saw it recently, right? With one of the large exchanges. But eventually what happens is when you're reliant so much on your own exchange, okay, you're going to earn a lot from DEX fees. You're going to earn a lot from launch pads, whatever. But what you're not going to have is consistency. It's eventually when that hype dies down and you're telling people you have to go through XSwap to buy our token, but then you've only got a couple of 1,000 holders. Eventually what's going to happen is it's going to lose relevance. The only people that are going to be buying from that exchange without millions of dollars worth of marketing push is your own investors. So instead of doing that and stumping growth, at the beginning, we're going to be using XSwap as a secondary exchange. We're happy to, say, hey, we're not the best exchange yet. Let's not be silly here. We know we're not the best exchange. But what we're going to do during that time, we're on our main, liquidity, providing liquidity to the main exchange. We're going to be building that liquidity in the back to provide farms to our DEX, to build that TVL, to build the partnerships, to grow with other tokens. And as Shib said, we're partnered with Assure DeFi. If you don't know who they are, they're one of the leading KYC providers. So anyone that lists on XSwap will have to be doxed. So building farming pairs with projects that we don't care if you're smaller, we don't care if you're larger. We want to work with projects that want to grow in the space, right? I think a lot of times projects spend way too much focus on trying to get with the big guys and go for these massive partnerships when, projects like MDB, they're not a massive project, but they have such great products. Ego, not a massive project, such great products. Solar, not a huge project, and they've got an amazing development team. There's so many possibilities and opportunities with such smaller tokens, right? And that's what we want to build. We want to build that unity in our DEX for all these tokens and say, hey, this is a great group of tokens. We want to farm, you want to earn tokens with them. More information on exact pairs will come out. We're still working with a couple of people to, plan the DEX and aggregate it correctly. But yeah, we're looking to build a safe space where you can Earn tokens that aren't going to rug, earn tokens that aren't going to completely tank in value because we know that they've got long-term plans. And obviously, take their tokens to earn our tokens. So a lot more information on liquidity farms will come out directly. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. Thank you for the question. Sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there.
No, yeah, beautiful answer. That was and the humble approach. I appreciate your response about the DEX and recognizing that, like, hey, if it's something that everyone's doing in the space, I'm not going to be the very best right out the gate. I shouldn't pretend like I'm going to be, but I'm going to build something worth using at that point. Next question, a little bit of a hardball question. There's been, obviously, with the events of the last 48 hours in both the rebase and the LMS space, there was probably 10 or 15 questions about hey, what would you say to someone who is, one, not stoked on rebases right now because of some collapses they've seen, and two, not stoked on LMS because of what they've seen. Smexer said specifically, after the recent events that happened with different protocols regarding their LMS, people are understanding that LMS is not just a magic wand that you use to make a project sustainable. I have to ask, what are the first steps? Or sorry, essentially his question is, how do you address the concerns of people who just got burned by mistakes with rebasing or LMS?
Yeah, so definitely. So we had a community AMA in our Discord yesterday. So I would definitely highly advise people, if you guys want to check that out, it's my own platform. So maybe I was a little bit more voquacious about my personal opinions on some things that have occurred recently. That being said, a lot of these are driven down to a lack of professionalism, a lack of management, and a lack of vision. So without naming, I'm not going to put names out, but the LMS failure that we're referencing, it wasn't really a failure on the LMS. It was a failure on the implementation of the LMS. And I know this for a fact because I reached out to that person and project who hosted and created that LMS for them. So they set their range way too wide. They have, basically, I guess they just figured that they were going to pump 5 times, 10 times, and whatever, and it was going to be magical and great. There was no real vision, no sustainability variables, nothing else from day one. They just had that hopium going on. So once that LMS, so the way it has to work is you have to get to that top ceiling, that top part of the range for it to start selling and supporting itself. Well, go look at their charts. Within 2 hours of them launching, it was down by the lower part of their range. Just like that, immediately. So it was unable to ever accumulate any funds to support the LMS mechanism itself. So that's a design flaw, and that was a logical fallacy from their, whomever elected to do that and thought that it was going to be so great. But that is where we've kind of talked about, you got to remove your ego. We're in a pre-sale. It would have been fantastic for us to max out. We're going till Friday. It still would be great. But we have to, basically temper expectations a little bit along the way because we are in a bear market and people have lost money in this space. So with us here, it's, again, done kind of talking about all of their failures, but we've learned from these before this one failed for sure. So, investing for sustainability variables outside of that standard Ponzi economic theory where you just need new investors to support the protocol, that's nonsense. The LMS system is a variable to consider. It's not going to be the thing that's the driving platform. The only one it is with Horde because that's what they drive their platform on. And fantastic for them, right? Everyone else who implements it, you're not there. You're not what they've done. You don't have the funds that they have. So you have to have a variety of things working together or else it's going to fail. If you have one single tiny stick holding up this huge mountain and that stick gets a couple crumbles in it and breaks, well, now it's gone. But if you have 10 sticks under that mountain and one of them breaks, okay, yeah, you still got 9 others to support it and allow it to grow and function as you rebuild that one accordingly. So there's a lack of business mindset in crypto that's already been, we've seen that many a times over. And I don't think you could run crypto businesses like a normal brick and mortar. I've ran a boat dealership in the past, so that kind of works on the sales side of it, consumer based, right? So you can take those philosophies, incorporate them into DeFi and engage it together so that these work when, basically in unison, two different business theories working into one. You need to have that strong background, and you also cannot be afraid to, take a couple risks occasionally, but don't bank everything on one single element and hope for the best, because that's a flaw. It's a, logical fallacy. If anyone's done like any of the logic based courses out there, it just doesn't make sense, and it's bound to fail. Whether they failed in 2 weeks like they did or in 6 months, it was going to fail unless they had a different approach there. And that's what we've orchestrated this on, is a variety of mechanisms working together, hearing out the community, listening not only to their voices and the team's voices, but to the responses of the protocol itself. So if something isn't working right, I have no issues with saying, okay, hey, we might need to adjust this accordingly because this isn't quite working how we hoped and expected it would. That's fine. But if you do not adapt and overcome, and by the way, don't quit when you reach one sense of a hardship, that's nonsense too. But you take all those different elements, that's where I feel like we are very, very different from pretty much any project out there, especially establishing project. We're still in the pre-sale phase. We haven't been out for a long time, but that being said, that differentiates our mindsets very directly. And, like I said, I'm a little bit more loquacious in my community ones. They get some of the insider of my mind from different aspects, but that's my professional answer to that.
Cool. Now, and thank you for the professional answer. It is not easy to disassociate personal opinions from professional
if you want to
answers.
see the real answer, the non-professional answer, jump on our Discord and scroll up a couple of hours.
Perfect.
I'm joking.
While we're sort of on that topic, someone asked another question about the LMS. For you guys having the ability to, do you have the free ability to just turn on or off the LMS, or is that locked in some kind of multi-sig as well?
You know what, that would definitely be in the multi. So we'd never turn it off. I mean, these LMS systems are proven, right? If you look at projects like Horde, there's no problem with their LMS system. The LMS system wasn't the reason for the downfall, right? It was poor management. Now, one thing we would never do is make such a drastic decision without consulting the community. If we did say, hey, here's the reason why we have to do this, and here is the proof. Okay, for example, if the LMS was at 0, right, we need to turn it off, guys. It's literally not working anymore. We explain, here's the proof. Let's do a vote on it. Let's talk to the community. But with regards to just turning it off, it's not something we'd ever do impulsively. I would rather leave that with SHIB. We can put that under a multi-sig, but I'd rather leave it with SHIB so then we know, as he said, he owns all the contracts. He owns everything. There's no reason for it to be turned off. Lowering and adapting the ranges and speaking to the actual developers. That's one thing we did the other day in our Discord. We actually had an AMA with our developer in there, Kinsyu. He's a really, really good guy. He's docs with Tulip DAO. He's the one that sort of developed and built this whole LMS system, right? And you guys have spoken to him already. Of course, brilliant guy. And we do AMAs with him. So that would be the first people we go to, right? If there is an issue with the LMS system, we're not going to make an impulsive decision, right? Hell, we won't even speak to the community first on that. What we're going to do is speak to the specialist, right? You don't go to a mechanics to fix your laptop, do you? So if we're not versed in that specific, ball game, we're not going to play our own cards. It's much better to consult with the professionals, speak to the community, and let the community know exactly what's going on, rather than just switch it off or do that. But no, in a nutshell, there will never be a time where we just turn it off, unless obviously consulted by the community first or consulted by Solar telling us we have to for whatever reason. But there's no plans to turn it off, no.
Sweet. Easy. Next question, moving on from that topic, from Sporkman. Sporkman said, I respect that you've generally kept your identity cross-project. How concerned are you about the current reputation from your other managed projects affecting this new one? And how many people are joining you from other affiliated projects you've worked on?
All right, so I'm not too sure exactly whom they're talking about, but obviously I'm the founder, CEO, and the other members of my team have worked as mods and actively work as mods with other projects. I'm a community manager for a project on AVAX that I got that position in January. So it's a different network, different mechanism. It's a node protocol. So I'm not too sure the necessary relevance there, but I don't market it to them either. This is my own identity, my own build. I'm a community manager over there, so yeah, I do AMAs for them, and I kind of help, talk to their CEO and their founder and say, hey, maybe these are some things we can incorporate. But we all are very clear that node season has taken a big hit. I'm not going to hide from that either. But that being said, I still do my job there. I'd like them to get back to where they need to, and I'm going to support their success just as I do my own to the best of my ability. But I don't have the final say over there. Here I do. I can implement my own strategies, my own, various things there. And then obviously my team are free to work with whomever they want to. If they want a mod to make a couple hundred extra dollars a week, that's on them. I don't really care. They could, it's a free world as far as I'm concerned. As long as we all do our jobs accordingly, we are happy to work with and I guess for other projects if they so desire to.
Sweet. Easy. Next question from Zoga Kaisi. Zoga said, I'm curious, and this is in regards to your pre-sale, why did you guys choose to do the pre-sale on your own platform instead of somewhere like Pink Sale or a major IDO?
Well, the reason for that is simple. Essentially, if you do a pre-sale on a platform like Pink Sale, they take a huge percent out of it, right, and eventually it gets dumped. But one thing we're doing is looking to build a platform, especially of trust. I mean, one thing that we're looking to do is build a DEX, right? And one big thing in the community is a lot of people get a bit worked up over trust. That we're in charge of all the funds, no matter what happened or what platform it was built on, right? So what we wanted to do essentially is build our own platform to prevent future dumps from, Pink Sale or any other large platform that does pre-sales. And to just show from the get-go, we're looking to develop, looking to build, We don't want to have to just solely rely on other platforms and other sort of mechanics to be able to grow our protocol. We want to get up and go. We want to show that we're looking to build, looking to grow within this space. And I believe, doing things the best way instead of the lazy way is the best way nowadays. Look, for example, that pre-sale page, built again once by Solar. We could have easily just said, hey, we're going to KYC with Pink Sale, launch on Pink Sale, save the hassle. But instead, we said we're going to have a pre-sale on our page, so we stuck to that. We're not going to change just because it gets hard, So one of the main things was we want to build from the get-go. We want to have things that are custom, that are fun, that are interactive. And obviously, we don't want, in a couple of weeks' time, the community getting annoyed that Pink Cell or, Pancake Swap or people are dumping because of tokens they held. We wanted to make it as fair as possible. Everyone gets in, no whitelist, no seed, no angel investors. Everyone can buy as much or as little as they want. There is no minimum, there's no maximum. You don't have to, pay a fee to take your tokens out if you decide not to. It's all there in black and white. We're all docs on the page. And we wanted to just from the get-go say, hey, here we are, this is what we're doing, and this is our pre-sale.
Sweet. Yeah, good answer. Next question from Randy. Randy asked, and I think this is just a great spot to talk a little bit more about your team's experience outside of, we've touched on it in little snippets here and there, outside of Protocol X, but just as we were talking about, I believe that one of the things that really sets apart a great project from a decent project is the team behind it. I bet on teams way more than I bet on ideas, or way more than I bet on projects. There could be 1,000 rebase projects, and generally it's the best team that is going to make it succeed. And I think that historically you can look at great businesses and great corporations and find that similar answer, that it's frequently the best team that wins, not just the best idea. So from Randy, we talked about how many people were on your team already, but he said, I would love to hear some of your experience with, as a team or as individuals, success in crypto and outside of crypto in the normie world. So that we can point back to, I mean, that's a broad question, but just to point back to say, hey, we bet on teams. Who is your team for us to know a little bit better?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways to look at that there. So I can definitely speak about myself primarily, and then Brian can talk about himself. But the other four, we can just kind of give a little overview of their experience. Yeah. So mine, I started out generally in the public service field. I was I was active duty military and I was a cop. So I have a lot of experience interacting with people, interacting with stress environments, things like that there, which is great. I think from my character standpoint, that helped me develop in a different way than maybe, some other people might be, especially when they're younger, right? Your little 18 to 25-year-old window of time, that was my world. I've also ran like I mentioned, small business in the real world. It's a family business. It's been alive since the 50s and at its current location since 82. So I've helped with that. I eventually moved away from that, from Pennsylvania down to Texas, and my father's running that show up there. So shout out to them. They're doing super well. But it's just a lot of excitement from the business side, a lot of the experiences from the real world and business side transfer over so cleanly into the crypto world. I got my bachelor's degree at Penn State in economics, and I'll be going for an MBA actually at Penn State here online the next few months. So that'll be kind of, just increasing my knowledge base from the real world side. That being said, I've been a crypto investor since about 2018. Just the financial industry has always been incredibly intriguing to me for obvious reasons from my educational side. That has always been, just interesting to look into, right? So this variety of things. I started out with the Bitcoins and Ethereums, and then I got more and more into DeFi as time went on. Luckily, I got an early hit on the Shiba Inu tokens, hence the name ShibLord. Made an absolute killing on that. So that was kind of my first big token hit, my big dub in the crypto space. I guess that was last year at this point, or maybe, I guess last year.
Yeah, just about, yeah. Everything feels super long and super short in DeFi.
Yeah, feels like years ago, but I think it was last year. But then I started, my first job in DeFi was community manager for a protocol back in January. It's a node protocol. That was kind of my first thing there. I never modded before that. More so I just had the ability to, talk with people, to orchestrate kind of well-designed AMAs, to work very well with the community in general, and push the ideas of a development team who is primarily French-speaking to a largely English-speaking audience, right? That was kind of my main job there, is to branch that line of communication, give the ideas out from there. I've since developed, so now I'm on the main team with them, still as a CM role, but a lot as an advisor as well. I feel like that experience for me, I've got to see the highs and lows of that very specific protocol. I've got to see what they did great at. I got to see where they maybe were a little bit flawed at in my own literal personal experience, which is fantastic. In that same sense, I've been a heavy investor in rebase tokens for quite some time, since they pretty much started all the way back to the Wonderland time days, those good things back then, OHM, all that good stuff there. So I have a lot of knowledge base and personal investor experience on rebase protocols, which again gave another element of, hey, these are what they did great. These are what maybe they could have worked on. And that allowed us to build up to where we are now. So I think with my experience in business, and also just engaging and interacting with people, obviously I had to mature relatively young. I was in a position where I had to at that point. So I'm 29, I'm not quite 30, but I'm pretty close. So I have a little bit of life experience, a little bit of business experience, a little bit of crypto experience, trying to funnel all that into one, good little bundle here to bring it out and to the forefront with Protocol X. And I'll let Bran go into his experience on the crypto side and the real world side.
Beautiful. One quick question for Bran. You mentioned military. What was your MOS?
I was an 0311 Marine Corps rifleman.
Nice. Sweet. I was 11 Bravo.
There you go.
I feel like we find we find military all over the place. I know it's funny how often we jump into DeFi.
Yeah, and the bromance begins.
My feet and back might beg to differ sometimes, but they're doing all right. So
that's why I'm sitting in a chair now all day at a computer.
Sweet, brilliant. So that's all right. Now I'll touch base really on my experience within the DeFi space and my personal background. So I'm 24, quite young, not as experienced as Neil. Neil has all his military background, his policing background, and mine has really been just a business background. From when I was young, I studied business in college. I studied accounting and finance in university. I did take a gap year because I got so heavily interested in crypto. Crypto is a very interesting space. If anyone here, you don't realize how much of your time it consumes, right? So when I first started getting into crypto, I started with scalp trading, how to make money fast. I think everyone introduced crypto because they wanted to make money fast. And, I had a couple of $100 in an account, having some fun on it. And then eventually I found out about SafeMoon. SafeMoon was one of my DeFi tokens. Not my first, there were a few that I bought before when I first got interested in, Binance Smart Chain and the Ethereum chain and the ERC20. But eventually I made it to DeFi. And when I was in DeFi, you meet a lot of great people in DeFi, and I had a lot of good friends. Became a CM. Took my first ever CM role, was working on 20-hour days, built a community of great people. Had some things happen to me after about, 8 months, and I took a step away. When I came back to crypto, I took some moderating jobs, and I gained, that marketing experience. I gained everything from all my previous experiences and anything that I've done in the space. The reason why I like being a CM is, if anyone knows me, I'm active 24/7. Anyone in the chat can, say that. They usually say Brand doesn't sleep. Usually I don't, or I just sleep at really weird times because I don't know what sleeping schedule I'm on. But a lot of my, passion is within crypto, and I think that's where it separates. And as Neil said, it separates business and crypto. That passion, that's what separates it. Understanding that crypto is not just a brick and mortar. You can't just build it like a regular business, right? You have to understand what the people want. And 9 times out of 10, the projects that succeed are hype projects, right? So we will have that same amount of hype with the same amount of actual building and actual development. But my experience is I've moderated multiple communities. I've CM'd multiple communities. As you can see, I'm very well versed in AMAs. I do these, if anyone's in that now, I know someone said they've been to 5 AMAs. I think in the last week, this is our 14th or 15th AMA. Correct me if I'm wrong, Neil. But yeah, we're very, well versed in them specters. Sorry, brain fog. But essentially, where my expertise are is, the passion within communities, right? And that's where I stand. That is my main job role. I've obviously got an extensive marketing connection history. I've got a lot of connects with, directly with CMC and all of that good stuff, Certic, et cetera. And I know how the CPM and everything works, so I'll be assisting in that. But essentially, with my, history, I've always been born to be sort of that entrepreneur type, right? I was never that good kid in school. I was always finding ways to sell sweets at school, having fun from there. And as I continue my degree, I'm going to be doing my master's shortly in accounting and finance, and a sub-master's in economics as well, similar to Neil, to, grow my horizon. Explore the future horizons and grow from there as well. But as for everything else, we're here now. We all have extensive history. I can't speak for the other members of the team, but everyone knows and is on a similar sort of wavelength as myself and Neil. All of us, some of the team have moderated in communities, some advising communities, some have just been active in so many communities, right? And as investors, one thing that we've done really well is take each project that we've invested in, right? And I've said in the hundreds of projects, take a small part of each and every one of them and say, hey, what did they do wrong and what did they do right? And then work that into a sort of a formula and say, hey, we can actually build this and grow. And with all of our experience combined, DeFi is still pretty young. I think it's a good opportunity. And that's where we talk about the bear market. And it's a good opportunity to grow, even in the bear market or not in the bear market. Eventually, hype will come back. And if you're a token that's building in the bear market, by the time that bull market comes, you're going to have them products that you promised. You're going to have the products that you want to build, and you're going to be able to grow further from there.
Beautiful. Solid answer. Well, I'll ask, just realized I've had you guys for like an hour and 20 minutes. I'll ask one more question from the audience, and then I'll ask my final closing question for you guys. From Pi, he said, your pre-sale goal is massive. How are you going to encourage buying after the launch? I asked this to another team that we've referenced a few times today, and they just said generically, we'll add utility. But we all know how that worked out. As far as actually buying, so not even talking about them, but just, you guys have a large pre-sale goal. Right now, I think you mentioned you're at like 370K or something raised. How do you encourage buying after launch if the majority of your community buys in during the pre-sale?
So I'll touch base on a little this now, right? There's a big difference between comparing a $311,000 pre-sale and a $3.8 million pre-sale, right? Once you hit a $3.8 million pre-sale and you can't max out the further amount, your entire community is liquidated, right? Anyone that has invested or knows in rebase tokens has bought in. You've hit a large amount of the community. Raising 3.8 million is no easy feat, right? The difference between us and that, exactly, is huge. The difference between us and that is we are still only a very small community, right? We have a large partnership coming up, which we'll be launching on, which also spread mass awareness. So as for the pre-sale maximum amount, we're not too worried on that front. If we hit it, great. If we don't, great. To us, it's not really something we're worried about. I mean, raising 300,000 plus has already got us off the ground, has us going. We're already going to start building from that. But having the worry about after would just show faith, that you don't have faith in your token. Now, we're not going to sit there and say utility because that's a lie, right? No one buys a token off the bat because of utility. They buy a token off the bat because of hype. So one of our main focuses is growing, building, and also bringing in that hype, the fun, the excitement, make the community a fun place to be, make the community a good place to, talk and chat and be inclusive, rather than just saying, hey, yeah, we're going to launch PooCoin ads, because that doesn't work. You need to build the hype. You need to keep the community engaged. If people join your server and they see a dead chat, they're not going to buy it. So for the question, we're not too worried about that front. We have a large partnership coming up with one of the major players in DeFi, which will have substantial growth. We're going to further the packages with them to work with them more closely. And then we obviously have other partnerships to come at a later date. We're already in talks with other cryptos. We're already in talks with marketing firms, already in talks with getting our banner ads live and, the CMC, the CG. So as for the pre-sale not maxing out, it doesn't worry us in the slightest.
If I may add just one thing real quick, if you don't mind. All right, cool. Sorry. So, and also the other aspect of that, and I'll actually give them a little shout out because they're going to take a lot of heat from the fallout that they mentioned. But the other aspect of this is once people see successes, they decide to invest in. They don't like to invest into a falling knife. And Horde is a perfect example of that. People like to invest in them because they've shown that they can do what they say they can do. So that's what we're looking to do as well. Yeah, we're going to get our pre-sale allocation. We're going to get an initial pump when we go live. Probably, right? Can't guarantee it, but it is what it is, generally speaking. And then from there, it's up to us. If we do what we are saying that we're going to do and we have these strategies work, how they are structured to work, people are going to see that, the eyes are going to come on to us, and then people are going to be very willing to invest over time. So I think, that initial hype, the secondary hype, the, focused advertisement and marketing, and then also keeping our word is what really brings in those grassroots and massive investors over time.
Sweet. Yeah. Love it. Like I said at the start of this AMA, I am someone who has been heavily interested in rebases, primarily just because I like the concept of passive income plays, whether that's a revenue share NFT, which you guys also are going to be launching, or a rebase protocol, or reflection tokens, whatever it is. Like, I enjoy participating in passive income plays. It's kind of an economic experiment. I think it's a lot of fun in the DeFi space. But yeah, like we mentioned earlier, the biggest issue that rebase tokens have struggled with is runaway inflation. So I'm excited to see if you guys are the ones to solve the issue of runaway inflation in a rebase token. It's a lofty goal. And if you guys nail it, I'm going to be stoked that I got to sit down and talk with you guys before it happened. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. If anyone is interested in jumping into what you guys are building, you're in your pre-sale right now. Can they get involved in the pre-sale? Do they need to wait till the public launch? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we are currently live pre-sale. Pre-sale goes until Friday, and today is only Tuesday. So we have today, Wednesday, Thursday. We have 3 more days after today. Ends at 1700 UTC on Friday. If you go to our website, we can probably drop the link in the chat, or if you had it out there. But it's protocol-x.io. So protocol, a little hyphen, x.io. And then we have a pre-sale page on there. We'll drop the direct link in the Ledger chat if you don't mind. And then you can go right in. There's no whitelist involved. It's a fair launch for all. And yeah, all you got to do, you have to exchange with BUSD. So make sure you got some BUSD and just a little bit of BNB in your wallet for gas fees, of course. But yep, no real restrictions, and we're ready to go.
Beautiful, sweet. Bran, I just gave you, I saw that you tried to post it and it deleted it. I just gave you the role so that you can post links.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'll drop the link now.
Perfect.
I mean, someone already has, but yeah, I'll drop the link now. You can see our white paper, you can see our about us, you can see our KYC on there. The pre-sale is on there. Feel free to check it out. Obviously, if you want to jump in, do you mind if I drop our Discord link as well? Because I do like when people. Thank you. Yeah, I like when people.
But yes.
Yeah, I like when people are able to come in and ask their own questions as well. So if you have any more questions, we have a lot of AMAs coming up. I mean, this AMA has been great, so thank you guys very much for hosting it. I love these sort of AMAs, and I've got a lot of respect for House of Obsidian. And hopefully you sort out that problem. I saw the updates today, so you guys are great. We respect what you guys do, and yeah, thank you so much for having us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our pleasure. You can see, if you're listening, their Discord link is pinned in the ledger. We had a ton of questions today. If we did not get to your question, feel free to jump into Protocol X's Discord, ask them whatever question didn't get answered if you're looking for an answer. Otherwise, you can find the links to their presale if that's something you're interested in. Thank you, gentlemen, for sitting down with us, giving us an hour and almost an hour and a half of your time, longer than most of our AMAs go. We had a lot of good questions.
Anytime. Thank you for having us.
Hey, appreciate you guys. Thank you for having us. Talk to you all soon.
Awesome. Amazing. For anyone listening out there, we have an AMA tomorrow.